I believe that to whom much is given, much is required. This is the spirit that guides our work.
The Bush Center is warm and welcoming. Built on the campus of SMU, my alma mater, we invite visitors through our doors to attend public programming that attracts newsmakers and thought leaders for important conversations around the issues we care most about.
The Bush Center is a unique asset. Having a presidential center and institute combined is something that differentiates us from most of the places around the country. We're able to go where others cannot go and access resources that others cannot access. When we talk, people listen. When we invite, they come. And when we take on a project, we finish it. Guided by the principles of President and Mrs. George W. Bush, we are safeguarding and advancing the values of freedom, opportunity, accountability, and compassion. Rooted in our conservative heritage, we seek to influence policy, not politics. We believe that compassion is the work of the nation, not just the government. And our nation's strength lies in its kindness, courage, and self-sacrifice. As we boldly confront challenges, go beyond theory, and put ideas into action, we show the world America's best. We celebrate the goodness of our nation and look to the future with optimism.
Our mission at the Bush Institute is to engage communities in the United States and around the world by developing leaders, advancing policy, and taking action to solve today's most pressing challenges. Domestically, we focus on creating opportunity for everyone. We support a market economy that provides the best avenue for prosperity for all Americans. We foster opportunity by promoting a fair and robust immigration system. We believe that education is key to economic mobility. We support veterans as they transition from military to civilian life, and we advance women's leadership. Through our Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, we've trained hundreds of rising leaders across the country to be the values-based change makers of tomorrow. Globally, our mission translates into a simple objective: advancing free societies. We promote a clear vision for America's leadership and why it matters. Our actions promote global health and the drive for freedom, equality, and democracy worldwide. We achieve this not only by focusing on policy and research, but by also putting it into action.
In addition, our convening power is unmatched. We bring people to this great campus and facility and online through our public programming, publications, podcasts, and thought-provoking journals.
We are honored to be on this great campus and be able to partner with the SMU community and its world-class faculty.
Having the Bush Center here is really the crown jewel of the campus. Everyone associated with SMU is extremely proud of it.
When we dedicated the building to the American people, we did so with an unshakable faith in the future of our country.
George and I are grateful for the generous support of individuals and organizations that have helped us ensure that the Bush Center will serve our nation and the world.
We've had a great start. Now we must make sure our mission endures for generations to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President and CEO of the George W. Bush Presidential Center, Ken Hirsch.
Good evening and welcome to Engage at the Bush Center, presented by Highland Capital Management. We're grateful for those who are here live tonight and also for everyone watching on the live stream. I want to thank the members of our board who are here, as well as our Executive Advisory Council, and again, special thanks to Highland Capital Management for endowing this great program. Tonight we're conducting our third Engage program this year on the need for comprehensive immigration reform. And tonight we're going to turn our attention to the many ways in which the economic and workforce issues intersect with immigration policy. In a few moments, you'll hear from Laura Collins, Director of the Bush Institute-SMU Economic Growth Initiative. I'm used to introducing the Bushes at events like this. And a panel of experts who I'm sure will increase your understanding on this topic and entertain us at the same time. But first, we also have a special guest to introduce as well. And that is one of our sponsors for this evening's discussion, who would Stand Together, a partner in our immigration policy work. It's their common ground doors that are accompanying President Bush's art in the museum, which will be open after this event, which is a traveling exhibit that was put together by that organization to also bring to the fore the issues around immigration and the wonderful attributes that immigration has meant for this country. They've been a partner in our museum, and tonight they're a partner in this program. We are grateful for Stand Together's partnership and the shared vision to change the discussion and the narrative around immigration reform. And tonight with us is Daniel Garza, president of the Libre Initiative, which is an affiliate of Stand Together, and he's based in Mission, Texas. He and his team work to empower and educate the Hispanic communities across a range of issues, including immigration. Earlier in his career, he worked in the Bush administration in the Department of the Interior and also in the White House. Please join me in welcoming Daniel Garza.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you today. Waves of immigration permeate America's history. The story of my family actually begins in 1942, a time when labor to work the orchards and the fields was needed in America, as millions of our soldiers fought to defeat the fascist powers of Europe. We looked to Mexico, to Mexicans like my grandfather and uncles, who were asked to leave their families and hometowns to fill the need as braceros. As our GIs were winning the battles in the Pacific, European, and North African theaters, laborers answered the call to harvest the bounty of our farms and orchards. They planted seeds and irrigated saplings. They made sure fruit trees were pruned and blossoms were thinned, that fruits were kept warm from the cold and vegetables were fumigated, picked, sorted, packed, stacked, and transported to market and to our soldiers abroad. By the 70s and 80s, not much had changed. This was still the way of life for our family, moving along the highways through the states of California, Nebraska, and Washington State following the crop season. It's hard work, little pay, and working in the elements. Scrambling to find that next contract was a way of life that would take its toll. I would miss an unacceptable amount of school days, working the fields, following the crop seasons, and traveling to and from Mexico. After a visit with the high school counselor, it was made clear my only option was to drop out of high school after the 10th grade back in '84. The public school system wasn't really built to accommodate someone like me. By the fall of '87, Dad determined it was time for us to leave the fields for good. After 25 years of farm work, he had no retirement, no health plan, no vacation or sick leave days accrued. Quietly and without fanfare, we got in our car after filling the last bin of apples in the Yakima Valley and simply moved on. This whole time, quietly, Dad and Mom had been saving up. They invested their entire savings in a small business, a 16-unit motel just off the freeway in the small northwestern town of Toppenish, Washington. After spending borrowed money and renovating the place, higher profits soon poured in, and after years of sacrifice, things were falling into place and we were on our way. I had soon obtained a GED and went out to college. It really was my second chance. At 17, I had dropped out of high school, and 17 years later, I was appointed by President George W. Bush as his Associate Director for the Office of Public Liaison at the White House, to serve as his representative to the U.S. Latino community. And this is what strikes me about this exceptional country. It's that my parents, with their 4th grade education and all, my uncles, my cousins, and my friends from school, who all started out as farm laborers, left the fields long ago. They moved on to become professionals, middle-class Americans living in urban and metro areas. Their children have become lawyers, teachers, engineers, counselors, computer programmers. They have good, high-paying jobs. It is a testament to this nation, to our free market system, and to the industrious character of those who come to America, that so many of us, millions who started out with nothing, achieved beyond our expectations. And while there have been reforms that have helped migrant children remain in school, my family and I are but one example of this rugged individualism that made our nation the most powerful and prosperous nation on earth. While my parents had immigrated as legal residents, you can imagine how much harder it is for those who are living in the shadows. Today, 2 million migrant laborers labor in our orchards and fields alone. And when you count those who work tarring hot roofs, taking care of our old and milking dairy cows, or washing dishes in the humid back rooms of restaurants and mowing lawns, it goes up to millions and millions. Throughout our country's history, immigrants have brought new perspective, new ideas, new innovations, and new ways of doing things, and they work hard. And whether the contributions came in the form of low-skilled industrious labor or highly specialized skills, immigrants work side by side with native-born Americans to bring about the kind of progress and prosperity that have made America the most powerful, most successful country in world history. Americans know that immigration is good. 93% of Americans agree that welcoming people from different cultures is an important part of American life. Americans want a flexible immigration system, but of course we also decide who comes in, how many in a given year, and under what conditions. And when that's not happening, we get concerned. So any reform to be viable for passage must offer legal channels for those wishing to contribute their labor and talents, but must also serve to secure the border, must improve the systems that keep those out who would exploit America or would seek to harm Americans. We must expand access to immigrants who wish to create value, remove barriers to existing immigration contributions, and foster a welcoming culture. Regrettably, those in elected leadership have been failing for some time in the matter of immigration reform. So we must be those who bridge the divide, those who call on others to come together and leave partisanship aside. We must be the ones who convene, who seek consensus, who help opposing parties to reconcile differences and common ground solutions, which is why we are so proud to partner with the George W. Bush Center. They're doing the elemental work in the effort to welcome dialogue, to drive a productive conversation. And you can see it in the individual work done by President Bush and in the partnerships and initiatives they have promoted. Thank you all for what you do for families like mine to achieve the American dream. Thank you for helping to be that force that will continue to keep America that great nation where we can all rise together. We stand ready to help. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the director of the George W. Bush Institute-SMU Economic Growth Initiative, Laura Collins.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight to listen to us talk about immigration and the economy, something that we think is a very important topic. But before we get to that topic, I want to talk to you a little bit about Afghanistan, a subject that's been in the news quite a lot lately, and something that's very near and dear to our hearts here. As many of you know, the Women's Initiative here at the Bush Institute has done work on policy for Afghan women for a number of years. We have a leadership program that involved women from the Middle East, North Africa, and Afghanistan. And over the last 20 years, we've seen the gains that these women have made. Gains in education, gains in the workforce, and gains in leadership. You know, it really was the women on the front lines of pushing for more human rights, pushing for better conditions for their families. And overnight, those gains were all reversed. With the Taliban back in power, we know that women are no longer allowed to work. They're no longer allowed to go to school in many cases. And we know that there is an acute humanitarian crisis currently going on. It's not just about the violence and persecution that Afghans from all walks of life face. There's a hunger issue. There's a massive food shortage. Many children will suffer from acute malnutrition in the coming months. There is a shortage of medicine and medical care. That particularly affects women and children. And also, there's a banking issue. Most Afghans can't access more than a couple of $100s at a time from their bank accounts, and that's for Afghans in country. For those who have managed to flee, who are seeking protection elsewhere, they have no access to any of the savings they've built up over the last several years. Their bank accounts are shut down, their bank cards don't work, even their credit cards don't work. And because we know that these problems exist, we started to take a look at what are some of the solutions. And we wrote some policy recommendations, and I urge you to check them out. And one of those things that we can do right now is the United States can work with the global community to really get humanitarian assistance into Afghanistan, because there are millions of Afghans who are at risk right now. One of the other things that really highlighted for us was sort of the difficulties in our immigration system that for most people are probably inconvenient, but for Afghans, they can be deadly. Speaking specifically about things like backlogs and bureaucratic hurdles, we know, for example, that the special immigrant visa holders, people who worked for the US military or the US government in some capacity, who had a legal pathway to come here on a visa and get a green card eventually, those applications were backlogged for years. Many people who do qualify, who did such great work for us over the last 20 years, they're still stuck because of paperwork. And also, we recognize that the tools that we have in our immigration system to protect other people just fell short, particularly for vulnerable women. We know, for example, that if you want access to refugee resettlement, you have to first leave Afghanistan. But to leave Afghanistan, the Taliban's asking you to have a visa. But you can't complete a visa process because you need to have an embassy interview. And embassies for the United States and many of our Western allies are shut down. So there's no way to actually leave to do the final step to get your visa so that you can resettle somewhere else. And there's no way to get the visa that would allow you to leave. And these are just some very practical hurdles that we see that can be deadly for people who are seeking protection from violence and persecution. And so we have these policy recommendations talking about what the United States can do, what the international community can do, and what individuals like you can do, because we know that there are Afghans being resettled in our communities right now who need our support. And so we urge you to check out those recommendations and those resources on how to support Afghans here at our website, bushcenter.org. And now, the subject you're all here for, the economy. At the Bush Institute, we believe that America benefits from immigration, and one of the ways that we benefit greatly is through the economy. One of our panelists tonight taught me that good immigration policy is good economic policy. And so you'll hear a little bit tonight about some of those bigger impacts, those macroeconomic impacts. You'll hear what the business community really wants. But I thought it might be fun to talk a little bit about the foreign-born population here in DFW. How many of you are local to the area, Dallas-Fort Worth, or surrounding communities? Quick show of hands. Okay, good. So you might be interested to know that about 1.5 million foreign-born people live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's about 20% of our population here. And about 84% of those are of prime working age. That means they're just like you and me. They go to work every day, they earn their paycheck, they then invest in their families and their communities, they drive demand for goods and services, which creates jobs in our local economy here. And we know that they're actually very key in one particular industry here, and that is construction. 48% of construction workers here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area are foreign-born. And those numbers include not just legal immigrants. They also include the undocumented population. And given that that's about 1 in 5 of us, I think there's a good chance that each of us interacts on a daily basis with one foreign-born person, whether it is a legal person or an undocumented person. We know that that they exist in our communities, and we're probably interacting with them on a daily basis. I found those numbers from a group called New American Economy. They're one of those groups like Stand Together who work very closely with us on things like immigration policy and practical solutions. But I know you're very eager to hear from our wonderful panel. So tonight, I'm pleased to introduce you to some people that I consider to be experts and also good friends. Doug Holtz-Eakin is the president of the American Action Forum. Alfredo Duarte is the president and founder of Taxco Produce. And fun fact, he's an immigrant himself and was painted in Out of Many One. You can see his painting tonight after the show. And Lori Lee, who is the CEO of AT&T Latin America and Global Marketing Officer. Please welcome our panelists to the stage. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. And I want to start with you, Doug, because I already gave up your line, good immigration policy is good economic policy. What does that mean, and what are the gains that we could have if we actually had an immigration policy that's focused on economic growth?
Well, first, let me just thank you and Ken for the chance to be here tonight and for your leadership on this and so many issues. It's a real privilege to work with you on this. This is a huge opportunity for the United States. Typically, it's framed as a threat. It's a demographic threat that in the absence of immigration, we don't have enough children. We'd decline in population size, we'd get older, we'd diminish ourselves on the world stage. This is the Japan story over the past 2 decades. And and so we need more people. Well, that's true, but it's also true that this is an opportunity to just dictate our future, to choose the pace at which the labor force grows, the skills and talents that are embedded in it, and have an enormous impact on the economy. Because I'm a nerd, I did the calculation of the difference between no immigration and immigration, and it's only $140 trillion over the next 30 years.
That's tiny.
It's nothing.
No big
So this is an opportunity in my view. So we should do that. And I just want to point out that we haven't tried very hard. Yeah. You know, our previous immigration laws were written to foster the noble objectives of family unification and humanitarian objectives like refugees and asylees. And under 5% of our visas are granted for economic reasons. And still, 40% of the Fortune 500 were founded by CEOs or their children, immigrants or their children. The immigrant population starts more businesses than the native-born. It works more hours, retires later. Yeah. It delivers more capital. It is the lifeblood of the U.S. economy. And if we just tried harder, imagine what we could do. That's the opportunity.
Yeah. Alfredo, you're one of those immigrants. You know, Doug mentioned that immigrants start businesses more often than native-born, and I think in Dallas it's something like 105,000 immigrant entrepreneurs. So tell us why you decided to start your own business.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think I made a plan to start a business. It comes down to what's in front of you at the time. And one thing that I know most entrepreneurs have is the sense that they don't want to work all their lives on something. You know, you continue to look for something that you like. And I didn't want to work for a company. I wanted to do something for myself. I wanted to kind of be the master of my destiny. And so, in that sense, I worked the first 7 years in the States when I came across the border illegally. I work in Los Angeles, and I had some good bosses and some that were kind of harsh to me and everything. But I got to Dallas, and then I met my partner, Jesse, that worked for this produce company for 25 years, and I saw the opportunity, the growth of the community, the need of those ingredients and the foods and everything, and he already was in the business. I just kind of, my master plan was to convince him to quit the job, you know, and start a new company with a guy that didn't know anything about it. But you know, one thing that I always wanted to do is, if I started my company, I knew how to work very hard, very dedicated, and it's what I did. So, just to answer your question, what I really don't know. There's necessity. I mean, a lot of people say, so you started the company, and how do you decide to start the company? When you don't have anything, it's not a very big decision. I mean, you don't have anything to lose. I mean, you know, and a lot to gain. So, and you should not be afraid of not making it. You just get up and try again and try again.
Well, and we know that entrepreneurs like you employ a number of Americans, and so that's an important piece of job growth and economic growth in the United States. Lori, you know, AT&T, tiny company. I'm sure no one here has heard of it, but when you think about, you know, the needs of your company and the needs of the business community at large, what do you think the business community would like to see out of immigration policy?
Well, first of all, Laura, thank you for having this conversation and hosting us. And I also couldn't help but overhear your comments about women in Afghanistan. AT&T has been involved in helping train and support their businesses. And, you know, I just encourage everyone to take your guidance and please reach out and see what you can do to help. We hate to see any backsliding of the success and progress that's been made over the last 20 years. Here's how we think about immigration policy as a business, and I'm sure there's many business people here in the room tonight. We look at immigration policy the way we would any regulation policy that might be coming from any government. And that is, we step back and we say, is it conducive to growth and investment? And when we apply that lens and we get an answer back that's yes, it is, it's usually because of the following thing. It provides clarity, it provides transparency, and it provides certainty. And when you have that kind of set of policies, then you as a business have confidence in bringing capital or solving business issues around that framework. And so I can't help but draw on an example from my own industry, and that's the Telecom Act of 1996. And when that came about, there was clarity that broadband and the internet would not be subject to previous telecom regulation. And so what happened? Very quickly, you didn't use your home phone for your voice, you used a wireless phone, and then you were texting, and then you were using data, and then you were connecting to the internet, and today we watch TV through mobile devices. And the whole time that that was happening, billions of dollars of capital were flowing into the internet and building out 3G, 4G, now we're on 5G, building out IP DSL, VDSL networks, and now fiber networks. And you saw innovation flourish. We all gained from it as consumers, but you saw companies, you know, that didn't exist now become global leaders, and you guys could all name them: Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, Uber. And so I just think that provides some analogy to immigration policy. And the issue here is we need a great labor source, and we want to tap from the US or anywhere, and if we had clarity around immigration, I think that would be a better tool and would unlock business investment and business choices about how to manage their labor pool.
You know, Doug, we've heard the sort of big macroeconomic picture. We've heard how entrepreneurs contribute. We've heard what clarity and transparency could do for business. These are all very compelling things to someone like me who works in immigration policy. I'm sure it's compelling to our audience. What is the holdup here? We've seen, you know...
Why is this my problem?
I mean, you know this. I mean, we've seen in DC in particular, you know, so much immigration policy needs to be made in Congress because we know that if it's done through executive action, you can just roll it back with an administration that doesn't agree. So unfortunately, we're stuck with Congress who moves slower. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but we've gone from this place where, you know, 2006, 2007 attempt, 2013 attempt, there was kind of this effort to really make these into pro-growth policies. The last 5 or 6 years haven't been about that at all. They've not really driven that economic piece in immigration policy. So what's holding this back?
I think there are three things. To be honest, and I'm way outside my lane of expertise. But number one, there's an enormous amount of fear in America today, probably tracing back to the attacks of September 11th, 2001. Over the past 2 decades, we've become a fearful nation, and pandemics don't help, and great recessions don't help, and terrorist attacks haven't helped, and there's a lot of politics of fear. It is easier to incite fear and anger than to reach across the aisle and get something done. And we've seen what it's left us with. And it's on both sides. And in this particular area, it has become a sad truth that it is better to have immigration as an issue than as an accomplishment. And so we have it as an issue, year after year after year. Promises to do something, first 100 days, you know, and no real dedication to getting it over the finish line. Third piece of this, I think, is just the economy really is the missing ingredient. The one thing we all benefit from is a stronger economy, greater opportunity for ourselves and our children, meeting that generational test of leaving behind a nation that is more secure and more affluent than the one we inherited. That's the economic piece of immigration reform that does not get featured enough. You hear a lot about legalization. There's some real good arguments I'm happy to go through on that. A lot about the border, that's for real. It has to be dealt with. But the common ground, the piece that could pull it, I think, over the legislative finish line is to talk about the economy and to get more business-like about how we talk about the economy. Sort of, you know, this is what's for you as a worker, this is what's for you as a business. Let's go do this.
Yeah, you know, at the Bush Institute, we really agree. I mean, you've seen our work on this, and you know, legalization is important. the border is very important, but unless you're willing to take on that legal immigration piece and really start driving that, it's not going to fix the whole package. And you really do need to focus on each piece, even if you take them bit by bit. There's probably a lot of debate right now, and each of you have probably had this conversation. We all know there are labor shortages.
Oh, yeah.
We all know that there is a need for workers. We can see the help wanted signs, particularly in our own communities. But I don't really hear a lot about why immigration could be the piece that fits here and that helps us pull out of these labor shortages. And so I'm curious, Lori, what you think about, or what the business community really thinks about these labor shortages and what needs to be done. Is it an immigration issue? Is it something else?
Yeah, so look, you know, commerce today is hyper competitive, it's absolutely global, and it's ever changing. And there's a new set of issues to deal with in your business that constantly change. And you said it, Laura, today it's labor shortage. And in fact, I worry every day about and I think it's true for AT&T in total and for my business and probably, again, for many of you, do I have the absolute best and brightest talent to compete in that ever-changing dynamic world? And so how does any business do that? Well, first what you do is you retain, particularly when there's a labor shortage, you retain every possible employee that you can. And we have all kinds of ways to do that through benefits, packages, wages, et cetera. But the other thing you do is you help upskill those people. And at AT&T, we spend nearly $200 million every year trying to build those skills and close those labor shortages. However, the other thing you need to do is you need to attract that best talent. And we do that in the US, but we want to do it globally, and we need to do it globally. It's about having the best and the brightest. And I have the benefit, I run the Latin America business for AT&T, and I have 25,000 employees across 12 countries in Latin America. And I know firsthand the skill set that they bring, and I have so much pride in my heart for the work that they do. And I just think we have to open up and be able to, attract from the US, from around the globe. And there's just so much benefit that they bring. So to your question, what do we need to do? I'll say it again, we need clarity on immigration, employee-based immigration, so that we know how can we use that tool and how can we attract from around the world. I think secondly, we need policies that allow cross-border exchange. I have lots of employees in Mexico, Argentina, Uruguay, Colombia, Brazil. I want them to come to the US, and I want to send my employees in the US to have an international experience. I think that's great for all parts of skills and for serving our customers' need in a diverse, global, competitive environment. And so having clarity about how to do that. And then the third thing I would say is I just think we have to modernize the system. I work at a technology company. I think we should apply some technology. And I think things like backlogs and cycle times, and then, looking at limits that we have on certain green cards by country, et cetera. I just think we should modernize it and relook at all of that. And I think if we did those things, all businesses would be able to better manage their labor force, have the best and brightest talent, and that would make our country and our economy prosper.
Yeah, and to your point about the modernization, this is something that, we saw it was incredible in thinking about trying to evacuate people from Afghanistan, right? And the number of organizations we know that were trying to pull out people they knew, their allies, and one of the only ways they had to do this was something called humanitarian parole. And for humanitarian parole, basically, we know you need protection, but this is the only way you're going to get out, and so we can vet you and let you get out without a visa. But to file humanitarian parole, you have to file it in hard copy through the Postal Service. And so USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service that runs this, was asking attorneys who were filing humanitarian parole applications for Afghans to file it on brightly colored paper so they could pull them out of the pile and process them faster. And even then, they were telling us it was a 3 to 6 month process. That's not good enough for someone who might die because of persecution that they're facing. And so this is something that, the lessons learned from that, we know that most of the applications on USCIS cannot be filed electronically. The ones that can, their systems don't talk to the attorney systems, and so you have to fill out all of those forms organically. You can't just take the information you have and put it into a form. I mean, that is the modernization piece, I just think is so important to this, because that's not actually something that Congress has to change, right? That's not something we have to change in immigration policy. It doesn't even affect the caps, but it could actually change those backlogs significantly. So I think that's a really great point. Thank you for raising that. Alfredo, these labor shortages impact you as well. But I also want to bring in here, I mentioned before that Alfredo was painted in the book and his painting hangs in the museum. And that's because we've gotten to know you over the years, not because you're an immigrant, but because of your work with your company and because of your interest in our North America work. Tell everyone here a little bit about your story, because I think it highlights so much the need for immigration, not just at the high skill levels, so often people focus on that piece, but also, people of all backgrounds, all education levels have skills and things that they can contribute to this country. So can you please share a little bit about that for us?
Well, that would be very brief on my story. I came in 1975 across the river in San Diego to Los Angeles, and all it was in my mind, we were very, very poor back home. And all I wanted to do is to help my parents to buy a house. And that's what I did. I got a job and I started working, and then at the same time that I got a job, I met my wife, Irma, and married a year and a half later. So at that moment when my son was born, I became a citizen of this country. I realized that this was my life here in this country. In 1983, we moved to Dallas because Los Angeles, California is very hard to get a job. If you're not educated and you didn't speak the language good and all that, those things, so those are things against you. You move to a city like Dallas in 1983, and there is all kinds of opportunity. I had 2 jobs within a week. I was working. I was a very hardworking guy. And I still think that I still work pretty hard. But anyway, so just moving forward, we started the company in 1985. Running tomatoes from one restaurant and then buying the merchandise for the next one, and that goes on for the next 36 years. We are in North Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma. We go as far as Delhart and the Panhandle, almost in New Mexico. And that's our territory right now, going to Austin, San Antonio right now. And that is kind of my story. In the process of that, growing the company and everything, I got involved in different organizations, education, Cristo Rey School. Right now I'm on the board of Catholic Charities that are, we're gonna be dealing with a lot of the refugees from Afghanistan and all that. And so I continue to get involved in boards like that. And I have some people that I have followed through the years. Raul is right in front of, he's the one that got me into all this. And so I'm just a product of the people that kind of surrounded me around and all that. I want to talk a little bit about immigration, and not the immigration necessarily the one that we're thinking about bringing in to continue this, but the immigration that is already here. Yeah. The people that are already here, that have been here illegally 20 years, and they brought kids, DACA, probably your question next. One of and I'm going to touch DACA first and then a little bit of immigration. DACA, I don't understand. We pride ourselves as a country when we come over here and do this test of citizenship. Yeah. You have to speak the language, know the Constitution and all these things. And we got this million kids that came here to speak the language, know the Constitution. They're educated. What better immigrants you need? What better immigrants? And they're already working. They're in health services, teachers, attorneys, I mean, you name it. We already got 1 million kids. Yeah. They become a piñata for Congress for all these people. And this, the biggest problem that I see with immigration is the rural areas. The big cities, somehow they disappear, they get jobs and everything, and then the rural areas that resent. When you go to a little town in Kentucky, there's 7,000 people, and their unemployment is 27%, they're gonna resent that. And so we got a lot of the rural areas of this country that we need to start looking at too. But also the unwillingness from those people to move to the big city where the jobs are and the companies. They don't want to change their lives. You know, so but they have the power to vote, and they vote for politicians, and these politicians are afraid of that. They can be changed next year. And we have this rural area, they have no contact with immigrants, they don't understand those people, and they don't even know the differences they make. Right now, in this economy, right now, a lot of this economy is based is surviving because all those illegal immigrants in this country, everybody's working. Yeah. Everybody's working. We're having a hard time getting people back to work. And we have a shortage of people, but those illegal immigrants that are here, they're working right now. You know? And so I don't understand that part. We need to take care, I think we need to take care of the DACA kids and then really look into the people that's been here 20, 25 years, they have homes, they have kids and American citizens. They cannot go back to their homes and visit their families. They need to send money to their countries, travel back over there, build homes for their kids, and hopefully they make a difference down there with the families that they don't have to come this way. Because they're going to be seeing their relatives, people they haven't seen in 20 years. So I think there's a lot of work to do over here, and we need more people on the immigration that we are always, and obviously AT&T needs scientists and all that. I need somebody that can load up a truck if we don't have it. Yep. And so the only way you can do that, those people, the people that I need, they're never gonna qualify to immigrate to this country. That's true. Never. They're gonna go and try to do an application, and they're gonna be rejected right there. Because we want the smarters, all this, but we need everybody. I think industries like agriculture, I tell you just a little thing about agriculture. The reason that the Baja California, the peninsula, is so up there in agriculture is because the stream of people that used to come and pick all our produce couldn't do it. After September 11, we tied up the border, and they couldn't come and work 6 months and go back to their homes. So what did the companies do? Driscoll, all these people, all the big companies in California, they set up shop down there because they got plenty of people to work. So Pilgrim Pride closes downtown for 400 immigrants. The immigration came in to clean up. They have 2 years to try to replace those 400 people on the bottom of that company. Couldn't do it, shut it down. 2,600 American citizens and legal immigrants lost their jobs. And there's a lot like that in the whole country. Companies, the trailer company in Paris, the meat company up in the Panhandle, they can replace those people. Nobody wants to do those jobs. And so we need to look into those industries to set up an office. The United States should have an office in Mexico and everywhere and allow a certain amount of people that we need in different levels and different talents and everything, engineers, all kinds of things, but also look at the industry on the bottom, please.
Thank you, Alfredo, very well spoken. You mentioned, though, DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is the executive program for the Dreamers, people who were brought here as children. And you know, we talk about them like kids, and I don't mean to correct you here, but a lot of the Dreamers are people my age, right? They're in their mid to late 30s, they have American citizen children, and this is because the DREAM Act in some form has been in front of Congress for 20 years. It's never made it through a single Congress to a president's desk. But it is a topic that I think has a lot of popular support right now. You know, we've seen even some Dreamer storylines in pop culture lately. If you saw the movie In the Heights this summer, there was a Dreamer storyline there. this is an important issue not just to people like me who talk about this all the time, people like you who probably know some dreamers. Lori, talk about what it means to AT&T and the business community.
Well, first of all, thank you for mentioning In the Heights. That's actually a production by our Warner Media company, and it's a fantastic film for many reasons, including the DACA story, so available on HBO Max. Sorry, that was my global marketing job that just popped out. Okay. Look, AT&T feels really strongly about DACA. We have supported it. We believe that these are great individuals who, as you said, are adults, and they need to have a permanent way to establish residency in this company, and we support that. And many of them are in our workforce. They are engineers, but they're also the folks who come to your home and install internet, or take calls when you need customer service, help. So we're just highly supportive of it, and they were brought here as children. And I think about this. They were brought here as children. This is their home. In my personal opinion, they're Americans, and they're contributing. And you heard Alfredo talk about that, and they do so many things. And I just think it would be terrible if we can't get the DREAM Act passed and get this issue behind us, because they're contributing to our society, to our economy. They are as American, I believe, as any of us. And AT&T joins, I think, other companies. You hear a lot about BRT, in our firm support for the DREAM Act. And let's get this resolved, and let's get the right policy in place.
So we've heard sort of the nice emotional plea, and thank you for that. We agree that there needs to be some sort of legalization of path to citizenship for dreamers. But Doug, let's talk about the economics, the very last warm and fuzzy piece of this. Because we know that we have an actual real world example now, what it looks like to give a group of people a work permit so they can actually work legally. Obviously, they can't get citizenship based on that. There is a citizenship premium. People earn more once they naturalize. But what does it look like? What do the numbers tell us about the benefits of simply giving them a work permit?
The Dreamers are responsible for $40 billion a year in the United States by themselves. An enormous contribution to the general welfare. And it's the same story that we can tell about lots of different aspects of immigration. And everyone's simultaneously appreciating and enjoying the fruits of their labors, but it's immoral how they're being treated. It just is. And it's a real lesson in the current failures in Washington, where essentially any good bipartisan idea becomes a hostage and never gets done, and it gets held hostage to other partisan aims. And so I find this among the most frustrating of many frustrating policy issues. My anxiety closet is very full. But this one's unbelievable. The Supreme Court has ruled that the DACA rule was done improperly, and that the Congress may not have given the executive the authority to do this to begin with.
Which is a rarity in immigration policy, right? Because Congress has given the executive branch a ton of power on immigration policy.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So you would think that this would be the moment when the President of the United States would stand up and the leaders in Congress would stand up and say, okay, whatever it was, it's time for us to fix this. Let's get the law through. There are 11 bills of one sort or another with bipartisan co-sponsorship. That's just a haunting failure to me. Like, it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, it shouldn't be that hard. And from our conversations, we know that some of what they're arguing about is population size, right? Like, is it just limited to the people who are DACA eligible? Do you add on additional people who wouldn't have been able to apply to DACA? And then the legal dreamers too, right? The people who aged out of the system because of the backlogs.
Or whatever else I can attach that's my specific thing, and thus this bipartisan center never gets done because the fringes are holding it up. And by the way, most laws aren't perfect when you pass them. You'll get another shot at this. Do something.
And it's been so many years since we passed anything on immigration anyway. So we know, those of us who work in this space, we know immigration policy is a long game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the long game, and we've been very close. I mean, we were literally on the cusp of succeeding in 2013, one of the really heartbreaking moments in this history. And I believe we can be there again. You have to lay the boring policy foundation first so that the new members and the new staff and the people who haven't seen this movie before understand the benefits broadly of immigration reform. Conversations like we're having tonight, just walk them through it. And then you have to do the tough art of making good policy, good politics. It will be in your interest to go home and tell your constituents you voted yes on this. Here's why. And that has been done before, can be done again. And so, you know, this is very frustrating, but I'm an optimist in the end. The case is too overwhelming to fail forever, and we'll get it done.
You know, Alfredo, I want to talk a little bit more about, you mentioned the contributions of undocumented people, and you spoke very passionately about it. And, you know, I think so much when we talk about the undocumented community, we talk not about their contributions, we talk about why they shouldn't be here. And I know when I worked with you, Doug, we did a paper about how much it would actually cost us if they weren't here. Do you recall what those numbers are?
It's $50 billion to deport them all.
Yeah. And it's about what, 6% of our workforce?
It is 6% of our workforce. So if you were literally to do this overnight, as maybe some politician once suggested, I won't name any names, you would destroy the fabric, the social fabric of America, cost yourself about $50 billion, and, by the way, start a Great Recession. So it's a winner.
So, you know, I guess, you know, from our perspective, you know, we do call for an eventual path to citizenship for the undocumented. I know that's not always popular. There are some who really do prefer simple legalization, but we know the economics of this are very clear. You do get a premium for citizenship. But there's another reason that this is pretty good, and it's not necessarily just the economics, right? There is that social fabric issue you talked about. These people live in our communities. They go to our churches. Their children are in school with our children. And if you stop at that place of just a green card and don't give them the opportunity, right? Some people stop at a green card. They don't necessarily naturalize right away. But if you have that opportunity to eventually become a citizen, you're giving them that path to really be a full participant in civic life. And, you know, Alfredo, I don't want to put you on the spot too much here about your own personal journey here, but you know, you and I have talked before about, you know, you felt like an American when your son was born, but you didn't naturalize for several years, and there's a variety of reasons people don't naturalize. Some of them are barriers built into the system, and some of them are just, it's a complicated discussion, right? It's a complicated decision to make. So can you talk to our audience about what it means for that extra step, what it means to be able to declare yourself an American citizen and take that oath, and how you feel connected to the community after that?
Yes. I'll tell you what, as far as me, I just completely, I didn't even think about it. I never felt that I belonged to anywhere else after I had my family, my daughter, my son, my wife, and I never thought about it. And then when the last president started his mandate, then I realized, well, wait a minute. I probably need to become an American citizen. I don't know what's going to happen. And that was my main reason. It just scared me. And the fact that I was not participating and completely in this country. I mean, when you vote, you have a say on it. You know, you can think whatever you want, and that doesn't count, and whatever, but it does count. You know, every person. So it is very important, and it was very important to me because of my family. They're all American citizens, and I was the only one not in that club. And so I needed to become an American citizen. That's one of the most emotional days I ever had. I cried the day because for some reason I didn't do it, but then 4 years ago I became an American citizen, and I realized that I was here, that nobody can take me away from here anymore. The other thing is that you realize how, every time you travel and you go somewhere in Africa or Australia and everywhere, and you come back over here, you want to kiss the ground. This is by far the best country in the world. And I'm talking about everything, freedom. You can do anything you want. You can go to school. There is so many countries in the world that don't have the freedom that we have. And that is the most important thing. And so at that point, I was really afraid not to somehow lose that. And I tell you what, it's a great honor, an honor to be an American citizen. It's an honor. You know, I don't take that lightly. It's a lot of responsibility too. You know.
We are so glad you are an American citizen, Alfredo. So one of the things we really like here at the Bush Institute, mostly because if you know President Bush well, you know he likes action and he likes us to go forth and change things. So one of the things we like to do here is have a call to action for all of you. And so, you know, Lori, I'm going to start with you. What is your call to action? What, if you could tell the audience today, you would like for them to go and do when they leave here tonight?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here, because my call to action is to continue what you're doing with your presence tonight. And that is be aware of what's developing around this topic and what immigration policies are being considered, and keep that awareness high. And then my second call to action for all of us is to use our voice, and to use our voice. We've heard so many suggestions and so many improvements that we can make in this area. Just use your voice. For me and for AT&T, we would say, let's get immigration reform done. Let's have clarity. Let's modernize the system. And I think you heard it, and I speak from my heart, and you heard it from my colleagues here. You know, let's get DACA resolved. Those folks deserve a permanent place in this country.
Doug, I'm going to go to you next. What is your call to action for this audience?
It's similar, but I think the key is genuine public education, because nothing happens in this country unless elected representatives go home and have their constituents ask them why they haven't done something, or thank them for doing something. And right now, we're not getting either. And the reason is immigration is surrounded by all sorts of myths that immigration is going to lower our wages. There's no evidence of that whatsoever, that somehow this is a threat to our children. No, it's the opportunity our children are going to experience if we actually get our act together. They need to know those things and know that they will be rewarded by taking what has historically been a tough vote. And you know, I think it's a really nuts and bolts issue, and you should think about it as just one representative at a time. Let's make the case and change their minds, and that's what you need to do.
Alfredo, what is your call to action for this audience tonight?
Wow. I tell you what, when we see, I think it's, the media has so much to do with everything that is happening. The media is you know, because now it's unbelievable that you can live in a small place in a mountain and have dish and get all this information, whether it's good or bad, and that helps you to make up your mind. I think it needs to be a better control of what is said in the media. I mean, and it's going to be very difficult, I know, because our freedoms and everything. And you can see sometimes the fights they have at schools because of somebody for a mask and somebody doesn't, and almost to the point that to attack themselves, and something that doesn't have nothing to do with immigration. Immigration, we need to, in Congress, they need to stop taking this as a negotiation tool. Immigration should not be that. One of these days, they're going to come out, and they already did. I mean, when they told him they gave him the money for the wall, and as long as he had an immigration thing, and then he didn't accept that. So we need to stop. We need to really see the contributions of people. You know, one of the things of the media, just to the cost of an immigrant to our society here. They don't cost anything. They cannot apply for welfare. They don't get anything from the government. The only thing they get is health services. And they pay more in taxes than what they get. Mm-hmm. You know, and and that is a misconception, and they put it over there, and people believe that. And it's very hard. I think Congress should know better and it's going to be hard, but they should say, this is it, we're going to get it done. So I hope that is the way this gets resolved, that they get there and really do the right thing.
Well, and I will take a little bit of moderator's privilege here and have my own call to action. And my call to action is for all of you to be leaders. Political leadership matters on this topic so much. And it doesn't have to come from the top. It can come from the communities. It can come within your own family. It can come within your faith communities. You know, be those sorts of leaders you want to see to drive the sort of change that you want to see at the grassroots level. It's so important for all of us to make sure that we are having good, responsible conversations about topics that are hard, like immigration policy. And so that is my call to action for all of you tonight. So I have a few announcements to make, but first let's thank our wonderful panel. I know that I love hearing from so many different perspectives on this, and I hope all of you learned something. In particular, I want to point out, you know, Lori's comments about transparency and clarity. I think that's so important. It's so lacking in our immigration system. I want to say thank you again to Highland Capital Management for endowing the Engage at the Bush Center series. We really appreciate your support, and also for Stand Together for sponsoring tonight's program. We have a couple of events coming up we would love to see you guys back at because we love our audience here. First, Monday, there is a webinar in the middle of the day at 11:30 Central. It is about Afghanistan, so if this is a topic you want to learn more about, please join us for that. Also, save the date for our next Engage program. It's November 1st. It's the Laura Bush Book Club, and it's with author Gail Seamock-Lamont. So please figure out a way to log on or join us for that. You can visit bushcenter.org for information about both of those. On your way out, please join us upstairs in the museum. The special exhibit is open out of Mini 1. Please browse the paintings, Alfredo included. And we have exciting news. The permanent exhibit will reopen on Monday. So if you would like to come back and visit us again, you can purchase tickets online only, also at bushcenter.org. Thank you so much for joining us, and good night. We hope to see you upstairs.